Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program and the Interplanetary Chase. You know, it would really help if I decided I had the ability to talk before I started narrating these videos. But regardless, you join me while we are finishing construction of this absolute monstrosity going by the Kerbin Orbital Lab VPU. Now, for a bit of context, of course, in the previous episode, we sent up some landers, are they really landers? Ascent and descent vehicles, they do both jobs instead of being two separate stages, but regardless, there's two of those on the lab, and obviously we ended the episode on the question of, well, what are we doing attaching some landers to the station, of course, if the station can't necessarily get anywhere. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what this thing intends to answer. You might notice that, of course, this is a little bit of a unorthodox design. I suppose is a bit of an understatement. As you can see, it's essentially one absolutely humongous rocket, followed by a massive nuclear engine towards the back there, and it's surrounded by docking ports, of course. We're actually trying to dock this thing to the to the Kerbal Orbital Lab. Now, of course, there's nowhere that we particularly are able to dock something like this without sending two. So this is actually one of two, as our ascent stage is. I suppose you could call them run out of fuel. Thankfully, looking at our trajectory, we do already have a relatively good rendezvous. As you can see, we are just beginning to circularize our orbit. And we do so as we approach a 10-kilometer distance away from our target. So far, so good. Periapsis is coming up from the negatives now. Periapsis is already at 100 kilometers. We're trying to keep our nose at a point where, of course, we can maintain that particular heading. Or not heading, sorry, but altitude. As our periapsis is now above the atmosphere, which means we are good to, of course, begin some orbital maneuvers to bring us in a little bit closer to the Kerbal Orbital Lab. As you can see, this thing has plenty of RCS. I took some inspiration, of course, from some of our previous vehicles where I learned that we didn't have enough RCS pointing in particular directions, hence why this thing has 4 sets of RCS thrusters instead of only 2, which we otherwise would have done. Little bit of lag there as the station, of course, comes into render distance. So far, so good. I should probably clarify that you may notice on the top of this vehicle, of course, there is a nacelle. There's nothing in that nacelle other than a passive relay antenna and our drone core. That wouldn't have been particularly necessary. However, of course, we do not yet have the 2.5 meter inline drone cores, so we had to kind of make do with a fairing to make this thing look somewhat good. Once again, I know that fairings are extremely heavy for what they are, but this one isn't staged, and of course I wanted it to look somewhat cool, so that's why that's there. Now, as you can see, we did make a bit of a mistake, so to speak, in that the landers we attached in the previous episodes are utilising the normal docking ports, which means the only docking ports we have left are the junior ones, and of course strapping thrusters as big as this thing onto the junior docking port is not necessarily recommended, so at some point, of course, we'll need to get a Kerbal out there to maybe strut up the thrusters, assuming we can get them attached all right, and we're off to a wonderful start. As you can see, we've already hit the station, but nothing's broken, which is good, so here we go, just lining up. Turn off our stability assists and let the magnets pull us in, which it has. Now, that's one booster attached, obviously. It's at a bit of a wonky angle, as you can see, but that's nothing we can't fix owing to the alignment angle settings, which I've only recently discovered, so that's always nice. As, of course, set it to about 4 degrees and lock for rotation when it's pointing roughly forwards. As we send up the second one, I have lots of faith in our reaction wheels here, because I think it's impossible to keep a station pointing, you know, kind of neutrally forwards owing to these things. So the reaction wheels will be what are responsible for, I suppose, helping it hold heading as we fire the engines. Speaking of engines, of course, second one has detached its SRBs. We can already see the station, so we may have launched this one slightly late. However, given that once again we can see it, we should be able to get a nice rendezvous. Point prograde, not prograde, sorry, but towards the horizon. This ascent wasn't quite as efficient, as you can tell, given our current fuel loads as we detach race boosters. And go through the painful task of trying to rendezvous with the station, of course, using our nuclear engine. These things are fantastic for interplanetary operations because they are so efficient. What they're not so good at, of course, is, well, kind of thrust, which is what they're meant to do, but you know, that's not the point. At the end of the day, as long as we can attach this thing to the station, when all's well that ends well, hopefully. So, as you can see, looking at the nav ball, we are 300 meters per second relative to our target. Of course, heading the wrong direction, so we need to think about doing something about that. At the same time, we are circularizing because we haven't actually achieved that yet. And we are now above the atmosphere in both our apoapsis and periapsis, which means we are orbiting. And of course, with a low periapsis comes a acceleration of velocity. So obviously we've time warped forwards a little bit, and we have actually accidentally even overtaken our station. However, that's not too bad, because at the end of the day, of course, that has brought us closer than we otherwise would have been. So, of course, our periapsis is now below the atmosphere, although if we're going to match velocities with the station, then of course that will recircularize us, and as you can see, we are now back into our stable orbit. A couple of 100 meters away now, and we need to firstly kill our relative velocity. Wonderful. This thing has quite a lot of gyroscopes. I've kind of put those there because, of course, look how big it is and how heavy this thing is with all that jet fuel. Of course, we can get away with using only jet fuel with this thing because the nuclear engines require no oxidizer, which is, once again, partly what makes them so efficient. Now, we're going to set the docking port here as our control point, although that does kind of throw me off a little bit, as I'm a bit unfamiliar with those particular controls. Now, as you can see, I'm desperately trying to find the probe core so we can reset that as our control point, although I'm not having much luck. So, as you can see, I'm just having to kind of bite the bullet here and pray that we have enough monopropellant for me to, you know, figure out the controls and hopefully get ourselves docked up with the other docking port, right? So, shouldn't be a problem, because once again we have two 2.5 meter RCS tanks. I believe it's two, it might just be one, but still, that has a lot of fuel. Something else worth noting is, of course, these booster units, you may or may not have seen, it has 4 experiment storage units, so we have plenty of room for science with regards to wherever we may find ourselves. I need to kind of find a way to reverse this thruster, as we are kind of drifting back, which is good, but I just don't want to hit those solar panels, of course, on the hinges around the front. Of course, just manoeuvring ourselves to match our headings and our planes. Now we need to figure out a way to go down, as we do. And forwards a little bit. And down a little bit more. This is painful to watch in hindsight because, of course, once again, I am still not particularly certain on the controls when it comes to controlling a vessel sideways. I don't think anyone is, to be honest. It's kind of in the name, isn't it? But regardless, we time warp a little bit to kill our velocity. Let the magnets do the work on the docking ports, and that is the second VPU docked. Wonderful. Now, of course, there is a matter of realigning it, as we will do our best here. I think we need to do it from the other docking port looking at this, because we seem to be rotating the station around the thruster and not vice versa. So anyway, in the end we did manage to get that aligned, and of course now we need to decide who we are going to send up to the station for this mission. And That entails, of course, building a crew delivery vehicle, which we may or may not have done in the past. However, keeping in mind, we have since then unlocked this nice, shiny new command pods, which we're very much going to be using. As we add some parachutes, obviously drone core on top, so we can deorbit this thing without any crew. Followed by the decoupler, or better yet, a lander cam. Reason being is because the station can actually contain, I believe, 5 Kerbals. And of course, this particular command pod above the lander cam can only carry 3. And you'll see why we want some more Kerbals, of course, all in due course. Now, RCS thrusters, 2-way symmetry. We will eventually change that to 4 because, of course, that will get in the way of our ability to dock. Followed by nice little decoupler, and from here, of course, we can begin constructing our ascent stage. Make sure everything is nice and auto-strutted, changing the fuel tanks around a bit just to make things look a bit nicer. Of course, we do have a mainsail engine now, which I'm very happy about. And, of course, just realising now that we need 4-way symmetry on the RCS thrusters instead of 2. As we just name this vessel and save it. Now, of course, the decouplers on the side, followed by some SRBs. Put some parachutes on those, and I think we might put some Separatrons to help pull them away when they run out of fuel, as you can see. And then just redoing our staging, as that seems to have fallen apart. No fuss, and of course, going to be adding some fins. I have a very set kind of thing when it comes to rocket design. I'm starting to realise that nearly all of my rockets are looking the same. That is, of course, excluding the slightly wacky designs like, I don't know, the station ascent vehicle or this thing, not this thing, this is quite normal, the lander ascent vehicle. And, of course, some launch clamps to keep it steady. And we don't want any Kerbal jacking. Well, we do, in fact. We need to decide who we're bringing. Of course, there's Kerbal, Face, and Jeb. I was thinking of bringing Valentina, although I think Munrik should come with us here. So it's Kerbal, Face, Jeb, and Mumrik as our pilots. We have Bill, our engineer, and Elbert, our scientist. And they are all going to be joining us on this mission here, assuming I managed to read those all correctly. This is very, very time warped, as you can see. Reason being is because this wasn't necessarily the quickest descent, but of course we have timed it quite nicely as we begin breaking through the atmosphere nice and quickly. With that little passive solar panel on the bottom there, just in case we happen to run out of battery power. Once again, this isn't the most efficient ascent profile, given how early we're burning at our periapsis. I think I'm only doing this, of course, to match velocities with the lab in order to assist us with, of course, docking with it. Once again, this is using one of the tiny little docking ports. Reason being is because we have a tiny little junior docking port on the station nose, if any of you remember correctly. So we're going to be utilising that in an attempt to, of course, transfer our new crew to their living quarters. As we're 5 kilometers away now. We need to kill our velocity. Looking at our target speeds, we're about 65-ish meters per second, of course. Now, we have, unfortunately, run out of rocket fuel. However, that's not a problem, as we have plenty of monopropellant, and we have lots and lots of RCS thrusters. So, of course, we can kill our relative velocity. We are already circularized, except our apoapsis is a little bit high up owing to our the difference in, of course, relative velocity with the station there, which we're looking at fixing now. And as a result, we will be able to push ourselves in a little bit closer, and we should theoretically be able to dock with the nose of the station from there. As we drift ever so closer, following that orbital correction. And of course the docking port is at the bottom of the station here, given its current attitudes. So we'll set that as a target, control this vehicle, of course, from its own docking port. Bring ourselves in a little bit closer. And I think, of course, we'll look at docking mode from here, as we need to go down a little bit in order to avoid a collision. And I gotta say I'm very proud of how smooth this docking procedure was. And that is our crew delivery vessel, of course, docked up with the station. Now, just worth mentioning that for you guys, this must be running at a nice, smooth frame rate, whereas for me, of course, it was running in a crunchy single number of frames per second, owing to the sheer number of parts. I think the VPUs themselves, those side boosters, have 170 parts each. So of course we must be approaching kind of a 400-500 part mark for this whole station. So of course we have one Kerbal on board. We're looking at Jeb, get him on board. Then we have Munrik here, who we're going to... I was thinking of putting him in one of the landers, however I think it's worth putting everyone in the station until, of course, they need to be moved elsewhere. So that is exactly what we're going to do. And last but not least, of course, we have Albert, our resident spoon pioneer and esteemed scientist. So at any rate, it looks like we're all on board. So of course, from now, we can look at undocking the crew delivery vessel and of course deorbiting that using its RCS thrusters. Hopefully around the light side of Kerbin, make it slightly easier on the recovery boys, assuming we can get this thing back in one piece. As you can see, as long as we bring our periapsis down to under 70 kilometers, then the atmosphere will do the rest of the work for us. Thankfully we've done that and we have fuel to spare, so I think we're just going to accelerate the process a little bit and possibly bring it down to the 30-25 kilometer mark. There we go, as we decouple at 39 kilometers periapsis. Once again, this is controllable owing to the drone core just below the docking port and the passive antenna that you can see that we've clipped into it. Just firing what's left of the monoprop in our cupolas. Thankfully, of course, the command modules do have their own kind of integrated tank of RCS, which means that we don't need to worry too much. However, we don't need to worry at all now, looking at that plasma absolutely lighting up the heat shields and our orbital velocity dramatically decreasing owing to the atmospheric drag here. And the plasma's gone, so of course we've got through the worst of re-entry. We can pop our parachutes. Not that there's anyone on board. However, I suppose this is environmentally friendly, right? As we land, and that's it. As you can see, this is the state of the station as it stands. And this, of course, is in... this is not accelerated footage. And it just goes to show how difficult this is to play at this current frame rate. Now, there is something else that we might need to do, and of course, I actually downloaded TAC Fuel Balancer temporarily to possibly assist us with this. So, what we're doing is we're actually balancing the fuel loads in the whole thing, the whole station, including oxidizer, rocket fuel, maybe not RCS, because of course each thing has its own respective RCS tank. And what I need to do is I need to look at firstly making sure that the landers are fully fueled, and then we're going to have a look at disabling crossfeed between the docking ports, and ultimately that great big refueling unit at the back, I imagine it wouldn't necessarily be the most efficient to take that with us. As it's nearly empty, so of course we might have a look at emptying that and deorbiting that as well. However, of course, first things first, we need to get the fuel to where it needs to be. Now, I must apologise because, of course, I've never used this mod before, and I am not claiming to be particularly good. In fact, I am claiming to be particularly awful. Now, we have all the tanks that we need selected, so of course we're going to transfer out into all the other tanks. So of course that's for rocket fuel done. There are some remnants of liquid fuel and oxidizer left, which we will also have a look at transferring out, as you can see. And of course, once again, need to do the same thing with our oxidizer, I believe. Thankfully there's not much there. It looks like we've burnt through most of it. However, it's still worth, of course, getting rid of the fuel on this thing and then getting rid of the refueling module full stop. What we may do in the next episode is we may replace this with another big fuel tank and include some more science and kind of a bigger communications array along with some more batteries, as of course we did struggle a little bit with that when it came to transmitting our science lab findings back to the Space Center. We had, if I remember correctly, about 80 units of electric charge left, and of course if we're going to go interplanetary, then we can't afford to run out of electric charge. And of course we do have some more parts since then. Our tech level has increased since that particular mission, so we might be able to make this a bit of a longer range comms array. Of course we break through the atmosphere. This thing is uncontrollable. Actually, I lie, it's not. It has a drone core, but we're not using it, of course. We're just going to splash it down, as you can see, and recover. So that's that. And of course, right now we need our engineer to come back out and get rid of that stray strut. As you can see, we need to attach that to the big booster and attach that to the back of the ship here to make sure that it doesn't kind of warp the docking ports by any means. We do need to give Bill another strut, although we can't do that from outside, so we need to get Bill back on board here. So we just quickly admire what we've done so far, because I must say I think this is actually my most ambitious kind of in-orbit construction, so to call it. But of course we do need to finish getting those struts in place, so I'm just thinking in terms of solar panels, do we have enough? I think we do, but we'll add some more in the next episode. So of course we'll attach that final strut and get Bill back on board, and that is all she wrote thus far. So I must say, very proud of this thing. We'll put some more antennas, maybe some more batteries, definitely some more science, as of course we just have a look at finishing up refueling the landers. That shouldn't be too difficult owing to all the fuel we have on board. And once again, the oxidizer in those booster tanks shouldn't be there. They were put there because we balanced the oxidizer load by mistake. Those are nuclear engines on there, so oxidizer is not required, and we can use those to fuel up the landers. Bit of a boring episode, so I must apologise. However, of course this is all for the greater good and for our own interplanetary interests. Now of course a little bit different. On that note, I do need to say that we are coming up to the end of today's episode, so if you did enjoy today's episode, please do like and subscribe for more Kerbal Space Program and related content. And of course, new episodes should be coming out soon. And until then, fly safe, and I will see you guys in the next episode.